Hi everyone! In today's video I'll show you how to take this galvanized metal hanging mason jar that I purchased from the Dollar Tree and turn it into a home decor item. I'll be using Sublimation for this project, and I'll share with you my technique for creating a software template that makes alignment and designing for this shape super easy and accurate. So with all that said, let's begin by creating the software template for the project. So I'll be using Photoshop for this demonstration today, and what I wanted to show you was my design process for doing odd shaped substrates. Now when I talk about a substrate, that will be the item that we're actually going to sublimate onto. In this case, it's a galvanized metal mason jar that I purchased from the Dollar Tree. So the first thing I did was remove the twine that came around the top, so these two bits right here. Then I laid the jar on top of a white piece of copy paper and then took a photograph with my phone. Now try to keep your phone as level as possible, otherwise you can distort the actual image. So if you have a flatbed scanner, you could also use that to get the shape into the program. So on this particular one, I went ahead and drew some lines to show you the dimensions that you'll need to take. So from top to bottom, it's 9 inches. From side to side, it's 5.5. I will be adding a pattern for the top, so those dimensions are 4.25 by 1.5. So the first thing I need to do is bring that document or that image into my new document. So this document here is 8.5 by 11, 300 dpi with a white background. So I'm going to go to File, Place Embedded. You could also do drag and drop if you prefer. Hit place, and now that's on my page. But I know that this is not the right size. So the next thing you need to do is click on New Layer, go over to your rectangle tool, make sure no fill is selected, and I've chosen a 0.5 millimeter black stroke line, and I'm just going to randomly draw the rectangle. Once that's done, I'll go over to the transform panel and put the exact dimensions. So the width is 5.5 and the height is 9. Click OK. Click back on my move tool. Now I'm going to click and hold the rectangle I just drew, and when I see those two magenta lines intersect, I know that that rectangle is centered on my page. Okay. Then I'm going to click on the photograph that I just brought in of the mason jar. And don't use the corners, but use the top, bottom, and the two sides, and just adjust this so that it fits within the rectangle that you just drew. Okay, it will not be exact, but it will be close enough for you to design. Okay, so I'm going to pull that in, and don't worry about this outer space, you just want the metal part in place. Then click the check mark. Then I'm going to click on Rectangle 1 layer, click on New Layer, go back over to the Rectangle tool. Now what I'm going to do is just draw another rectangle that represents the lid. Okay, so give yourself a little bit of room here. So now that's in place, you click back on your Move tool, click the rectangle, and I'll see the single magenta line. That means it's centered on the page, and I know that's perfect, just right there. Okay, so click on Rectangle tool again, or Rectangle 2 again, click on New Layer. Now we start the fun process of placing the image. So I'll use Place Embedded. Again, you can use drag and drop. Hit place. Now this time I will use my Shift key, and I'm just going to size that down and place it within those rectangles using the picture of it to guide me. Now again, I'm looking for that magenta line that tells me that it's centered within the rectangles. Okay, so that's perfect. I'm going to place it a little bit lower because I plan to put either ribbon or twine on the top and maybe some flowers. I haven't quite decided yet. All right, so hit the check mark to accept that. Then I'm going to double click to the right of the layer. I'm going to add a drop shadow and a bevel and emboss. Hit OK. Now if the colors on your image are a little bit muted, or you think they may not show up that great, hold down the Control key and the letter L, and this brings up your levels panel. If you go to the midtones, you can increase that and just make the color just a bit more saturated. Okay, so that looks great. Next, what I want to do is deal with the top of the jar. So that is rectangle 2. Now what you can do here is you could bring in maybe one of your digital papers and use a clipping mask and fill it that way. What I have done is I've designed a bunch of patterns and I have them installed within Photoshop, so I'm going to use that option. So to make that work, I have to add a fill. So currently there is no fill, so if I click here, I can add a color, and it can be any color. Then I'll double click to the right of the layer, and I'm going to choose pattern overlay. And you can see I have a bunch of patterns and different colored buffalo plaids in here that I'll be using. So I'm going to select this green one. And what I like about these patterns is you can increase or decrease the size easily. So in this case, I'm going to make it 25%. And there we go. So now I've got the lid part designed. So we need to do a couple more steps and then we'll be ready to send this off to the printer. So we're going to go back to rectangle 1, and that's the one that represents the entire size of the substrate. Then I'm going to hold down my Shift and Alt key, and using one of the corner handles, as I gradually increase that, you can see it keeps the aspect ratio of the shape and gives me an even margin all around. So in this case, I'll probably give myself maybe about 1/4 of an inch. That's a kind of a comfortable margin for me. Then click OK. Now before you send this off to the printer, go down to the layer that has the mason jar on there, either delete it, or in this case I'm just going to click the eyeball so that it is off. And there you have a template that you can use to align that substrate to. So I'm going to send this off to the Sublimation printer, and in the next part of this tutorial I'll show you how I align the jar to this to give me perfect alignment. So now that you know how to make a template for these, let's go ahead and prepare it for sublimation. So you can't sublimate directly onto the metal, so to make sure that we have something that the sublimation could adhere to, we're going to use these Scotch thermal laminating pouches. Now they do have to be the thermal ones, they cannot be the self-stick ones. Now they come as a pouch. You've probably seen these before. A lot of people put ID badges and such in these. And you'll only need one piece of the pouch, okay? So just go ahead and cut them in half, set that aside, and I've gone ahead and done that. And this will be placed on top of the metal. Now the shiny side of it should be up, and the textured side will be on the metal. That way it will adhere in place when we put it in the heat press. So another tip that I wanted to share with you is, instead of using butcher paper or copy paper to cover this, I like to use parchment paper. Now parchment paper is readily available at most grocery stores. This roll I purchased at the Dollar Tree, and I also use this when I'm sublimating my mugs. I put a piece of this between the silicone wrap and the mug, and that helps with any blowout that can occur. So what I'm going to do is take this out to the heat press, and I'm going to press it at 400 degrees for 60 seconds. And then I'll check it, and if I notice that this has not adhered well to the metal, I will put it under a little bit longer. So these results may vary depending on your heat press. Okay, so let me go ahead and get that done, and we'll be right back. All right, so I'm out at the heat press, and let me just show you how I have it set up. I have a towel just folded, and then I use ironing board material. And that just gives it a nice little cushion, and that will help with the adhesion of the laminate. So here's my parchment paper. I'm going to lay down the metal and then make sure I use the rough side against the metal and shiny side up. Move this over a little bit. And then I've got a few pieces of copy paper here. I'm just going to lay that on top. Then 60 seconds, 400 degrees, firm pressure. Okay, so I'm putting my gloves on because this is going to be toasty. Just gently lift the lid. And then what I'm going to do is just check that this has adhered before I take it off the press. And I can see that that's adhered beautifully. So we're all set to go. I just need to let this cool down and then we'll go ahead and trim away all that excess. All right, so I've let this cool down for a little bit and I'm going to trim away all this excess laminate from the metal. So you can use a craft knife, you can use scissors, whatever works best for you. And there we go. So I've got most of that away. There's that part. And then I'll just trim it up, any little bits that I missed. And there we go. So now it's ready for the next step. So let's see if our template has paid off. So let me bring this into the picture here. So here's the image all printed out on Sublimation printer. Actually, I should hold it this way. And notice that it is mirror image. That's also very important. And the next thing we're going to do is align this to the print. So this box that we have around here, that will not sublimate onto the metal. It's just there for a guide. But it's very important that when we put blowout paper on here, that it covers that black line because it will sublimate onto that paper. All right, so here's the laminate side. I'm going to put it face down on top of the print. Now the first step I do is I look at the lid, this portion right here. And I'm really looking at this line here. I want to align that up as well as I can. All right, so I can see I've got about the same on each side and then a little bit up here on the top, so I know that that part is covered. Now when I look down here, I can see on the sides I've got my approximately 1/4 of an inch, so that's perfect and it's all aligned. And then on the bottom it's a little bit larger, maybe 1/2 an inch, but again it's level with the bottom. So I know that that's all good. So what I'm going to do now is just go ahead and tape that with some heat tape to the page. That way it's not going to move. Okay, so this is how I'm going to set up my press. I'm just going to put a couple of sheets of paper on the bottom. And I needed to make sure that they were bigger than this box right here, which I know they are. Then it's going to go print side up. So I'm going to place that right there. And then just another sheet on top. And 60 seconds, 400 degrees, firm pressure. And we should be good to go. All right. Now what I'm going to do is just peel this away. Perfect. All right, that's a little hard to see. So So we're going to let this cool down a little bit, and then we'll take a closer look at it inside. All right, so here is the finished project. Didn't that come out awesome? Let's see if I can get a close-up for you. Move this up a little bit. Or maybe I'll just bring it more closer to the camera, different angles. There you go. When the light hits it, you can see how good that comes out, that sublimation onto the laminate sheets. Isn't that beautiful? So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to poke out these holes here, and those are a little tricky. You can do them with an X-Acto knife or a pair of scissors, but if you have a round punch that is about that size, that's probably going to be the best way to go. And then I'm going to get my glue gun and some different accessories, and I'm going to decorate this up. So the next time you see this, you're going to see the finished product. So the mason jar project is finished. Isn't it beautiful? I hope you found this tutorial informative and give me a thumbs up. If you have any questions, please leave me a comment. I'll also list the products that I used in the description box below. If you haven't already subscribed, I hope you choose to do so. And until next time, thanks for watching.